I welcome you all to the module 10 of this course. So, the module 10 is about positive psychology interventions in education and classroom teaching. So, in this module, we will be focusing on specific interventions of positive psychology that can be applied in specific areas. In this module, we will be focusing on education and classroom teaching, how positive psychological principles can be applied in education and classroom teaching. So, today we will be talking about lecture 25. So, lecture 25 will be focusing on approaches to positive education, and this is the first lecture of this module, and overall it is lecture number 25. So, we will be looking at broadly different approaches, theoretical frameworks that are used, that frameworks from positive psychology that can be used in the context of classroom teaching and education. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture, which is lecture number 24, which was part of another module which was basically about positive relationships. So, in the last lecture we discussed various theoretical models of what makes for good relationship. So, we discussed when we talk about relationship with other people, we can explain the relationship and their outcomes based on various theoretical models, and we discussed few such models. We discussed models such as attachment theories, theories like attachment theories, balance theory, social exchange theory, and so on. And we try to understand how these theories can explain human relationships and their outcomes. We also discussed various interventions or specific practices that can be done in terms of fostering positive relationships. We discussed various specific exercises also in the last model. So, these are few things that we discussed in the last lecture. So, in today's lecture we will be focusing on, as it is focused on specific interventions in the context of classroom teaching and education. So, we will be discussing what is the meaning of positive education, what is the meaning, what are the ideas behind positive education. We will also focus on some approaches that are used within the positive education, some broad theoretical framework from positive psychology that can be applied in the context of education and classroom teaching. And at the end we will be discussing a specific case study of Geelong Grammar School, GGS school, where this positive education has been utilized in a whole school approach. So, we will see a specific case study of positive education using a example of one particular school. So, let us start today's lecture. So, when we talk about positive education, so we are talking about how positive psychological principles can be applied in the context of educational setups. So, positive education can be defined as applying positive psychology in schools, which integrates well-being and academic skills without compromising either. So, when we talk about positive education, we are talking about just relooking this whole approach of education in terms of adding the dimensions of or dimensions and principles of positive psychology that can be applied in the school context, in the classroom teaching context, and so on. So, the focus is on enhancing student well-being in addition to obviously whatever is going on in terms of academic skills without compromising the academic content of the schools and classroom teachings. So, there is an additional focus of enhancing student well-being in the context of positive education in addition to whatever the regular academic skills and teachings are going on. So, that is the basic idea behind positive education. So, the fundamental goal of positive education is to promote flourishing or positive mental health within the school community. So, the additional aspect in the positive education as compared to the traditional education system is that here positive psychology principles are applied to promote flourishing and positive mental health within the school community. So, the positive education is an approach, these are like different ways of defining it within the broader field of positive psychology that focuses on fostering well-being, resilience, and flourishing in educational setting. So, the basic idea is just it is a broad field of positive psychology. Within that, it is a particular applied aspect of positive psychology called positive education. Here principles and theories of positive psychologies are used to enhance or foster well-being, the concepts which are very relevant in the school context or in the context of children, in the context of adolescents, concepts like well-being, resilience, flourishing, and so on. So, in the context of positive education, it integrates the science of positive psychology, whatever we know from the research, positive psychology with the traditional educational practices to promote both academic achievement and personal development. So, just this is an additional focus that is given in the context of positive education, the various principles of positive psychology. So, the goal of positive education is to equip student with the skills and mindset needed to lead fulfilling, meaningful and productive life. Now, this is very significant why positive education has become so important. We will also focus in the next module also, particularly because education is not about getting academic skills, it is also about overall development of the personality. It is about the enhancing well-being and looking at life in a certain ways, changing your thought processes, overall your personality development and so many other dimensions which are important to succeed in life, to lead a life of well-being. So, education is not about getting just academic skills, which is one aspect of it, but another aspect which completes this whole education system is promoting well-being, which is the focus of positive education. So, the positive education basically focuses on these two dimensions which is shown in this diagram. One is the skills of achievement, which are related to typical academic skills that we learn through different courses, and there are skills of well-being. So, this is something which is missing in the traditional educational system, that skills of well-being are not given enough attention or it is not integrated within the whole education system. So, the students, they learn only the skills of achievement or skills which are required for a particular course or a profession and so on, but somehow in this whole approach we are kind of overlooking the skills of well-being and so on. So, to kind of fulfill that and to make this holistic growth of children, these two aspects are combined together in the positive education system. So, that is what is positive education is all about. Now, let us look briefly into how this whole concept of positive education came into existence. Little bit like historically, let us look at that. Now, this whole concept of positive education became kind of prominent in the field of positive psychology with the publication of a seminal paper by Seligman and his colleagues, they identified positive education as a specific subdisciplines of positive psychology, largely based on their work of Geelong Grammar School. So, basically they did an intervention and experiment with a school, GGS school, and where they applied lot of positive psychology principles, and from there basically this whole idea of positive education came into existence formally within the discipline of positive psychology. So, at that school we will be talking about how they did, what they did in detail at the end of this lecture, but here in terms of historically, let us look at briefly how this whole thing became important. So, at that school, GGS school, Seligman and his team explicitly taught positive psychology to staff, who then taught it to the students, eventually adopting a whole school approach to embed the science into the broader school culture. So, it was a very systematic step by step approach. First, staff, teachers and staff learned about lot of these principles of positive psychology, then they taught them to the students, and then eventually it became a part of whole school approach and it became a part of this whole school culture and so on. So, this approach basically centered on Seligman's PERMA model of well-being, which we have already also discussed earlier. Basically, this is a model which talks about different components of well-being. So, PERMA basically talks about positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning in life and achievement or accomplishment and so on. So, basically these are the important components which kind of makes or enhances well-being of our life, or you can say the building blocks of well-being. We will be also focusing this model little bit more detail in the upcoming lectures also. So, this whole approach was based on this positive education in that school. The experimenting with that school was based on this Seligman's PERMA model of well-being, where they added another component which is called H. So, it was like PERMA H. So, this additional element of H or health dimension was added because many considered health is also very important component for well-being. So, apart from these other factors, health was added, and that is what was focused in that schools in terms of integrating in the culture of that schools. Now, this school implemented a strategy of learn it, live it, teach it and embed it, where staff first learned and applied positive psychology, then taught to the student and gradually integrated into the everyday practice. So, that is what the systematic step they followed. Over time, this school also focused on establishing school-wide policies and processes to embed well-being into areas like assemblies, sports, music, chapel services and parent events. So, slowly they integrated into all the different dimensions of school activities, so that it becomes a part of school culture and so on. We will be focusing on other details later. So, that was one of the first experiment that was done in terms of how positive psychology can be integrated at the school level. Now, after this intervention in the GGA schools, many schools have adopted this positive education to equip students with skills to prevent mental illnesses, promote flourishing and support academic performance. So, after that many other schools also slowly adopted this whole program of positive psychology and integrated into their school curriculum. Over past decades, positive education has seen significant uptake in Australia and many other countries. So, countries like Australia has actually very actively integrated a lot of these positive education programs in their schools and so on. Now, these private independent schools with greater financial capacity and curriculum flexibility have been the early adopters, because it is not so easy to adapt such programs suddenly. So, mostly the private schools or the schools who had lot of resources, or independent schools who had much greater financial capacity and there was a lot of flexibility, they could integrate lot of these positive education programs. These are the schools who could adapt because of the flexibility and the financial capacity and so on, helping to build evidence based, to share best practices and inspire schools worldwide to consider benefits. So, they were the early adopters, they became like examples for a lot of these programs in the school. Now, we will be talking in details about how this intervention was done in the school later. Now, this lecture particularly we are focusing on the different broad approaches within positive psychology that can be applied in the context of schools and teaching programs and so on. So, that is called positive education. So, in the context of positive education, certain paradigms, certain frameworks, certain theories and models can be integrated in the school programs. We will be discussing those broad theoretical frameworks. So, in that context, we will be focusing on these 4 theoretical frameworks. There are others also, but I will focus on these 4 major frameworks that have been applied in the context of positive education. The first one is social and emotional learning framework. Now, this framework was developed much before the positive psychology, this whole emergence of positive psychology, but it somehow integrates within the positive psychology very smoothly. So, this framework has also played very important role in terms of positive education. We will also focusing on character education, growth mindset, resilience and mental toughness, and we will discuss each of them separately to understand how they are relevant in the context of positive education. Now, let us talk about social and emotional learning or SEL framework, how it can promote positive education. The social and emotional learning framework is a comprehensive approach to developing students' social emotional competencies, which are crucial for success in academic and life settings. So, basically this focuses on developing students' social skills, emotional skills, in addition to the typical academic things that they are learning, because these 2 skills are very important in terms of to succeed in life, both personal life, professional life and so on. So, this framework of social and emotional learning focuses on the social and emotional competencies and abilities which are very crucial for success in any aspect of life. So, SEL focuses on enhancing students' ability to recognize and manage their emotions, develop healthy relationships and make responsible decisions. So, how this social and emotional capacities reflect in terms of when we have better social learning, social skills, when we have better emotional skill, how it is reflected? It is reflected in terms of one's ability to recognize and manage emotions, You are more able to understand yourself and manage your emotions. You are able to make healthy relationships, make responsible decisions in life and so on. So, these are the skills which were like taught within this framework. So, this framework is typically organized around these 5 core competencies. So, the focus of SEL program or framework is to teach students these 5 competencies or skills in addition to whatever they are learning in the schools and so on. So, these are broadly social skills and emotional skills. So, the first one is self awareness, self management, then second is self management. So, these are related to understanding oneself, self awareness, self management, then comes social aspect, social awareness, relationship skills, then comes responsible decision making. So, if you look at these dimensions, these are very similar to the dimensions of emotional intelligence. If some of you have read about emotional intelligence and Goldman models of emotional intelligence, the dimensions are actually very similar to that. So, these are like competencies related to emotional intelligence. So, SEL framework actually focuses on these dimensions. Now, when we talk about self awareness, let us briefly look into each of them very briefly. What is self awareness? It is about understanding one's own emotions, strengths, weaknesses, values and how they influence your behavior. Self awareness basically means your ability to become aware of your own inner dimensions of behavior. To what extent you are aware of yourself, what kind of emotions you have, in what context, how do you react to situations, are you aware of that? Are you just unconsciously reacting to the situations without really understanding why you are behaving like that? So, self awareness is a reflection of one's own understanding about your own emotions. Are you aware of the patterns of emotion that you generate? Are you aware of your strengths and weaknesses? Do you have value systems? Are you aware of the kind of values that guide your behavior, influence your behavior? These are the aspects of self awareness. The more you are aware of yourself, more you understand yourself better, more you know, more you can control yourself, more you know how do you react to situation, what are your inner desires, what are your inner directions of life and so on. So, you are very clear about your own aspects, own drives, own desires, own reactions and so on. So, that is called self awareness. It helps students or anybody recognize their emotional responses and develop a growth mindset. So, the more you are aware of yourself, more you will be able to understand yourself, more you will to control and regulate yourself. So, the second dimension is directly connected to the self awareness. This is called self management. So, the self management is about ability to regulate emotions, thoughts, behaviors and in different situations. So, are you able to manage yourself? Are you able to manage the emotions? Sometimes destructive negative emotions comes and people start fighting and conflict. Are you able to regulate yourself appropriately according to the situation? Are you able to control your thoughts, which are destructive thoughts and so on, and overall your actions? So, this self management is an ability that is also directly connected to the self awareness. The more you are aware of yourself, more you will be able to manage yourself. So, people who have better self management skills, they can manage their stress, control impulses, stay focused on goals. Students learn how to set and achieve personal goals and so on. So, these are the reflections of self management. If you are able to manage yourself, you can control your impulses, manage stress, stay focused on your goals and so on. So, that is called self management. Then comes social awareness. So, that is the social dimensions of behavior. These are all connected to each other. Your self awareness will also help you to understand other people also, because the more you understand yourself, you can understand how other people are reacting. So, social awareness is your ability to empathize with others, understand diverse perspectives, recognize social and cultural norms. So, social awareness is about how do you, it is about awareness beyond yourself also. Are you able to understand other people's perspective? Are you able to kind of connect with other people in terms of people have different diverse perspective. You may have certain ways of looking at things, but you also understand people look at world in a very different ways. So, are you able to empathize with them, understand on them, think from their perspective? So, these are the important skills which help you to function better in a social world. Are you able to understand norms of society, cultural aspects and so on? So, this competency helps student develop an understanding of others' feelings, needs and viewpoints, which is very important to function in the social world. Social world you cannot function if you just only behave from your own perspective. When you relate with other people, you have to understand others' perspective also. That is where a lot of this harmony happens in relationships and so on. Then comes relationship skills, which is also connected to social awareness. This competency focuses on the ability to establish and maintain healthy relationships, communicate effectively, cooperate, resolve conflicts, seek help when needed. It includes building strong interpersonal skills such as active listening and teamwork and so on. So, these are all important aspects of relationship skills. If you have these skills, they will help you to kind of make better and harmonious relationships. So, you will be able to maintain a healthy relationship, communicate effectively, you will be able to cooperate and help other people, resolve conflict. Also, you can sometimes you need to seek help from others and so on. So, all these are important relationship skills which are important to function in the social world. The last one is responsible decision making. Decisions are very important. We have to take decisions on a daily basis. Some decisions are very important and it has a large impact, long term impact in our life. Some decisions could be very small in terms of their impact in terms of and so on. So, we take lots of decision on a daily basis. So, taking right decisions are very important in terms of because it determines the quality of your life. Right decisions lead you to the right directions of your life, and overall it determines overall lot of quality of your life and so on. So, responsible decision making involves making ethical, constructive choices about personal and social behavior. So, are you able to take constructive choices and the right kind of ethical decisions in your life and so on. So, students learn to consider well-being of themselves and others when making decisions. So, people who have self-awareness, people who have social awareness, they can take much more better decisions because they will consider their own perspective and how it influences other people. So, weighting consequences of their actions on others, on themselves and so on. So, this social awareness, self awareness also helps you to make responsible decision making. So, this is the major theoretical aspects related to social emotional learning framework or SEL framework. Now, this framework is quite old in terms of its root back to Plato's holistic curriculum. Modern SEL emerged from the Yale School of Medicine in 1960s. So, it was much before positive psychology actually came into existence. CASEL, which is an acronym for Collaborative for Academic, Social and Emotional Learning, which was established in 1994. It is an organization that aimed to integrate evidence based SEL into school. So, that also did lot of work in terms of implementing SEL in schools. So, this CASEL's framework includes these 5 core competencies that we talked about just now. So, they try to implement this in different schools and so on. This SEL program has also been integrated into different schools and programs, integrated into the various programs like Yale's Ruler program, Resilience, Right and Respectful Relationship, RRR program, 4 R's program. So, this is also called 4 R's program, Mind Up and Peace Work. So, these are different programs where this SEL program have been implemented into different schools curriculum and so on. So, this CASEL emphasizes not only curriculum and instruction, but also creating supportive environment through school wide practices and family community relationships. So, this can only be successful when this is kind of right kind of environments are created in the schools, not just by teaching. So, that is what the focus is given here. So, let us look into some of the research findings related to how SEL program have been implemented. So, research shows SEL program significantly improve social emotional skills, positive behaviors, academic achievement, with meta-analysis of 213 studies showed an 11% gain in academic performance also. So, some research showed that SEL had really significant benefits on students. So, apart from various emotional and social skills, they also had an significant improvement in the academic performance also when such programs were implemented. Mastery of SEL competencies is linked to greater well-being and school success, with while deficiencies can lead to personal, social and academic difficulties. These are also some of the findings. SEL predates positive education, as we have already said, because positive education came with the emergence of positive psychology, but SEL program actually was developed much earlier. While the two intersect very smoothly, their connections are kind of unexplored in, so that needs more research here. SEL competencies aligns with Seligman's PERMA model, also supporting positive emotions, engagement, relationships and meaning. So, this framework very harmoniously integrates with the positive psychology framework and the models like PERMA model of Seligman and so on. So, therefore, it can be very easily implemented in the context of positive education. Obviously, when we talk about such program where there is some kind of additional framework should be utilized within the school, there are certain challenges. It is not so easy to implement. Now, implementing SEL programs can be challenging due to competing curriculum demands, fragmented approaches and insufficient teachers training and so on. So, certain schools who had higher financial or greater financial capacity and so on, lot of these private schools could integrate a lot of these programs, but obviously, this may be highly challenging for other schools where their financial capacity is not that great. And it demands effort from this whole school administration, and the teachers also needs to be trained. So, which is not an easy task. So, these are very significant challenges in terms of implementing that. So, this effective implementation requires holistic stakeholders involvement, professional development for teachers, ongoing mentorship to ensure high quality delivery and so on. So, these are the things that needs to be in place in terms of continuously implementing such programs. So, all stakeholders has to be involved, professional development for teachers training has to be very regularly done and so on, ongoing mentorship should go on and so on. So, which is not easy for a lot of schools. So, SEL is valuable component in the context of broader positive education program, and research shows that it can significantly contribute to well-being of the student, but then there are certain challenges to implementing that also. The next framework in positive education that we will be talking here is character education. Now, this concept basically is associated with character strengths within the positive psychology. So, that framework has also been applied in various schools, and that has also a lot of promises in terms of promoting positive education and so on. This character here when talk about, it is mostly talking about certain personal characteristics or trait like characteristics which are morally valued and respected by others. So, those characters are called basically character strengths, and we have already discussed about character strengths in the earlier module. So, I will not go into the detail of the concept of character strength here. I will be only focusing on how some of the aspect of this program has been utilized in the context of education and schools. So, these are like traits and certain characteristics admired and respected by others. These are integral to who we are, who we want to become, and the values we bring to the world and so on. So, these are like basic aspects of character. So, different characteristics or characters which are morally valued, respected by others and integral to who we are as a person. So, this character education rooted in the teachings of Plato and Aristotle focuses on helping young people discover and develop virtues and strength lead to flourishing lives. So, these characters are very significant aspect of that significant contributor to quality of our life, because these characters actually influences us all the time and influences other peoples around us. So, if we are more conscious about them and develop them into virtues and strengths, they can lot of positive contribution to our life and in terms of education also. Now, values in action, which we have VIA model of character strength, we have already discussed in detail in the earlier module. So, this is basically the framework which was developed by Peterson and Seligman in 2004. They developed a classification of character strengths which are like prominent in humans, and they identify 6 virtues, and within these virtues there are 24 character strengths universally valued across different cultures. So, we have discussed about all them in the earlier module. I will not talk about them here. So, this framework actually helps us to understand character strengths and how to implement them and so on. So, this is a framework that is valuable. So, research shows that recognizing and using this strength enhances well-being, resilience, academic performance and reduces stress and anxiety. So, there is a lot of positive impact of these character strengths when we build them consciously, understand about them, and they can impact positively in terms of enhancing well-being, enhancing resilience, academic performance, reduce stress and anxiety. So, there is a lot of positive implication, at least the research indicates that. So, that can be integrated in the school setup. So, this VIA framework is widely used in positive education. So, a lot of schools actually use this framework in terms of positive education in schools curriculum and so on, with initiative like US based KIPP programs, which is knowledge is power program. It explicitly integrates 7 key character strengths. So, among all these 24 character strengths, they took these 7 and tried to use them as an intervention in the school. So, these are like curiosity, gratitude, self-regulation, grit, social intelligence, optimism and jest into their curriculum. So, they selected these few and then because they found them more relevant in the school context. So, this KIPP measures student progress using a character growth report card. So, they used a report card whether the students are developing them and with the different activities and so on. Similarly, in the UK's Jubilee Centre for Character and Virtues, it also promotes character development through a whole school ethos and explicit teaching within the subjects and so on. So, these are like different programs which try to use character strengths in the schools and so on, in terms of developing character strengths within the students in the schools. So, the third approach which is prominent within positive education can be called growth mindset. Let us see what is growth mindset. So, growth mindset refers to the belief that human capacities such as intelligence and abilities are not fixed, but can be developed over time. So, this is a kind of mindset that how do you look at yourself, how do you see yourself, are you like your mind is like fixed in things that nothing can be done about my abilities, my capacities, or do you feel that you can enhance yourself or expand yourself, your capacities, your intelligence and so on. So, that is how the people can differ in that mindsets. So, growth mindset is ability that when you believe that your capacities, your intelligence, your abilities are not fixed, they are dynamic, they can be changed using working towards that. So, that is called growth mindset. This framework was proposed by Carol Dweck's work on implicit theories of intelligence, which formalize the distinction between fixed and growth mindset, showing that students with a growth mindsets are more motivated and achieve better in academic outcomes. So, this mindset helps student in many ways. If you have a growth mindset, you will behave according to the growth mindset. So, you will try to expand, grow, do things so that it expands your skills and abilities and so on. If you have a fixed mindset, you will think that nothing can be done and so on. So, your behavior will be also reflected in that. So, this was a framework that first discussed by Carol Dweck's work. It became much more popular with later book called Mindset. Carol Dweck elaborated this idea of growth mindset in her book called Mindset, the New Psychology of Success in 2006, that popularized this concept much more. So, this concept contrasts with the fixed mindset and has had a major impact on education, business and personal development. So, this can also have a lot of influence on educational setup, and this can be applied in positive education. So, people with growth mindset believe that, as we have already said, that intelligence, talents, abilities can be developed, can be expanded through effort, learning, persistence and so on. So, that is the idea. In contrast, fixed mindset assumes abilities are innate and unchangeable. So, if you have a fixed mindset, you think my capacities, my skills, my abilities are fixed, I cannot change them much, because these are inherent or genetics, whatever it is. So, this is how these two mindset differs. Here little bit more detailed description of how this can manifest in terms of how do you perceive and behave in the world. So, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. So, here it is shown, this is about fixed mindset, this side is about growth mindset. So, if you see here, fixed mindset people avoid challenges because they think probably they cannot face those challenges. Growth mindset people views challenges as opportunities because they feel that they can grow and learn things and face those challenges. Fixed mindset does not accept failures or mistakes. Growth mindset people embraces constructive feedback and they try to move on and improve upon themselves. Fixed mindset people believe talent is a static thing. Growth mindset people learns and grows from failures. They keep working on themselves so that they can improve and so on. People with fixed mindset shies away from unfamiliar things. They do not want to experiment with new things. People with growth mindset believe in skills development and they keep experimenting and things where they can grow and so on, like this. So, these are different manifestations that are possible when you have a fixed mindset as compared to when you have a growth mindset. So, research indicates that growth mindset interventions can improve academic performance through effect size are small to moderate, but some research at least indicate people or students with growth mindset that actually or when interventions are done and the students are thought about growth mindset, such intervention actually improves academic performance of student. So, Dweck and Eager 2019 cautions us against oversimplified growth mindset implementation. But Dweck also said that it should not be just an oversimplified idea that you can just grow and so on. Implementation has to be based on proper strategies, not just relying on superficial things like saying that you can grow, you can do things. But how to do that? One has to have a proper strategies for that, not just having a mindset and I can do and you can do and so on. That may not work because one has to have a proper strategies for that. So, that should not be just oversimplified concept of growth mindset. It has to be based on proper strategies and implementation things and so on. For example, if a teacher notices a student struggling with math problem and says great effort, keep trying, without helping the student understanding the mistake and learn better strategies, it will not be helpful. Just saying you can do, you can keep trying and so on may not work in many situations because the student has to learn how to do that, what are the strategies and so on. So, growth mind has to be implemented with proper strategies and so on, not just talking and without any basis and so on. So, in education, growth mindset aligns with both academic and well-being priorities because this mindset completely it is synchronized with the positive education whole idea or aim of positive education. However, obviously the effective implementation requires high quality teacher training to ensure evidence based practices and strengthen teachers own mindset as their belief significantly influence. So, the main issue in implementing all these things in the school is that somebody has to teach it and that teacher has to have that understanding, has that quality. Teacher should also have a growth mindset, then only they can teach student about growth mindset. So, teacher has to know, teacher has to change themselves. So, that is the main challenge where we need to have agents for teaching that proper and the right kind of people. So, that may be a challenging thing in terms of implementing any of this framework. So, ultimately growth mindset interventions should be carefully designed and embedded within the supportive school environment to maximize benefit. Then comes the resilience, concept of resilience and mental toughness also had some relevance in the context, it is also relevant in the context of school and education system. So, when we talk about resilience, we have already discussed about resilience earlier in the module. So, I will not go into the details of conceptual details here, it is only about understanding framework and how they implemented in the school setups. So, resilience and mental toughness are key focuses in school, often aimed at addressing adversity rather than enhancing general well-being. So, when we talk about resilience, the concept of resilience is mostly used in the context of challenges of life, adversities of life, then only this concept is relevant. So, resilience is not discussed in the context of general well-being of life and so on. Resilience is your ability to bounce back from a challenging or adverse situation of your life. When something goes wrong in your life, then resilience helps you to come out of that situation. So, that quality is relevant in the context of challenges in life, resilience or adversities in life, problems in life. Their resilience is very significant. And obviously, everybody faces problems and challenges in their life. So, resilience quality is very important in terms of overall enhancing well-being of one's life or flourishing of life. So, Resilience, why it is relevant in the context of schools and education setup, why it is so significant. So, these are some of the important reasons here. One is student face constant stress and academic pressure. So, resilience is needed to come out of that. So, first one is academic stress and pressure. So, students regularly face exams, peer comparisons, performance anxiety, workload pressure. In all this concept, if you want to remain sane and able to go on with your life despite all this stress and problems, resilience is very relevant. So, in the context of school setup, resilience is relevant. One of the reason is because students face lot of academic stress and performance pressure and so on. Second is student also face lot of social and emotional challenges. For example, they face bullying in the school, peer conflicts, self-esteem issues, family problems affect student well-being. In all these social and emotional challenges situation, if the student has a quality of resilience, they will be able to deal with them properly, constructively and come out of them. Otherwise, lot of these challenges may take student in a very negative pathways in terms of destructive behavior, suicidal ideations and so on. So, resilience will help them to come out of that. Then mental health issue is another important reasons for resilience. Resilience is a protective factor against anxiety, depression and burnout. We all know that nowadays students and children are facing lot of these issues of anxiety, depression, burnout. So, resilience helps them to protect them basically. If a student is resilient, these things will be less, or they will be able to tackle them much more better way. So, that is why resilience is important in the school context. Then school engagement and performance is also connected to resilience. So, resilient students are more engaged in learning, persist in the face of difficulty and show improved academic outcomes. So, that is why for performance also resilience is significant. There is one program which is also has been implemented in the context of school is called Pen Resilience Program or PRP. So, this program, it aims to prevent depression in youth and have shown positive impacts of well-being. So, this has also been actually this program has been implemented in the schools. So, this Pen Resilience Program is an evidence based intervention developed by the University of Pennsylvania. So, that is why it is called Pen Resilience Program, because it is developed in the University of Pennsylvania to foster resilience, mental toughness and well-being. So, this is a structured program which has been implemented in the various schools of US and Australia and so on. So, it is rooted in the positive psychology and cognitive behavior therapy. So, it focuses both positive psychological processes or concepts and CBT therapy concepts. They integrate both of them in the school context to help individuals cope with stress, overcome challenges and thrive in the difficult situations of life. So, the major aspects of this Pen Resilience Program includes few things. I will just focus very briefly on that. One is that it focuses on cognitive restructuring. What does that mean? Is that it helps students identify and challenge negative or inaccurate thoughts. A lot of this depression and a lot of emotional issues are because we have a faulty thought systems where our thoughts are very negative, and when something bad happens, this thought goes into the loop of continuous negative thought processes. So, cognitive restructuring teaches people to identify this whole thought and logically challenge them that these are not accurate thoughts. These thoughts are like biased thoughts. One thing happens and you say my life is useless. So, there is no logic here. It is just one thing and you are saying this your whole life is useless. So, these are illogical thoughts which needs to be challenged. So, this is how it is taught. Students are taught about this identifying and challenging these negative thoughts. It also encourages more flexible, optimistic thinking in the face of setback. When challenges happens, how to think constructively, optimistically and so on. So, cognitive restructuring talks about that. Second is emotion regulation. Students are also taught about how to regulate their emotions. Teaches strategies to manage strong emotions like anger, sadness and anxiety. Build self-awareness, calmness under pressure. So, various techniques are taught to them when emotions are very strong, especially the destructive emotion, how to manage them and keep them under control and so on. The third one is problem solving skills. Students are also taught about how to identify problems, brainstorming solutions and evaluating outcomes. So, it is not just about academic problems, it could be problems of life situations and so on. So, it empowers student to act proactively rather than reactively. So, how to proactively engage with problems before it happens. So, that prepares you before the problem happens and so on. So, the students are taught about that problem solving skills. They are also taught about assertiveness and communication skills, which encourages clear, respectful self expression and listening skills. It strengthens interpersonal relationships and peer support and so on. So, that is also taught. The last one is goal setting and realistic optimism. Students are also taught about setting achievable personal goals and maintain a hopeful outlook. Goal settings are very important in one's life, So, if you are not able to set right kind of goals or realistic goal, one will experience frustration and so on. So, achievable personal goal, how to set that is also very important aspect of this program. It also helps to build confidence and perseverance. These are all qualities which are very important for anyone's life, particularly students' life and so on. So, it is a structured program where all these modules are taught to the students in the schools and so on. However, such program again not an easy, it may include cost and so on. So, especially it may be challenging for schools with less financial capacity and so on. So, because of the elaborateness and the details of the programs and the expense involved in such programs may limit the use of such programs in a lot of schools and so on. But overall the impact of this program has been very good in terms of how it influences students' well-being and so on. Now, how to strategically incorporate all these approaches? Now, these are the approaches we have talked about. All these approaches can be implemented in the context of positive education. Now, how can we actually any of these programs, how to implement that? That is the main challenge. These are very good theoretically, conceptually, and also when it is applied in context, they all shown lot of benefits. But how to incorporate that? That is the major challenge in the schools. So, some of the strategies which generally discussed in the literature, I will be talking about here. So, strategically incorporating these positive education approaches requires tailored context sensitive strategy rather than one size fits all model. So, because every schools are different, you cannot have one concept, one type of program for every schools. So, it has to be tailored and made context sensitive based on where the school is, which country, what kind of culture, what kind of financial capacity. So, it has to be tailored made according to the schools, the nature of schools, the kind of schools and so on, where it is located, what kind of cultural norms and so on. So, it has to be incorporated based on that all the sensitivity rather than we cannot have an one size fits for all kinds of program. So, because schools are very different. Schools face numerous pressures including academic expectations, bureaucracies, resource limitations, staff retention challenge, which can make such initiative difficult. So, one has to be very clear about all these challenges while implementing such thing. One has to understand all these blockages and problems and address that. Teachers already managing a crowded curriculum may experience stress and burnout leading to cynical resistance, because if teachers are already highly stressed and number of teachers are let us say less, they are already experiencing burnout and overburden with the curriculum. In addition to that, if we give such kind of things, it may not work for in many cases. So, one has to have all this proper strength of teachers and so on to implement such programs. Positive education should be seen as an added value that can be lived, taught and embedded within the school culture rather than an additional layer of initiative. So, the best approach is that it should not be made an additional burden, rather it should be smoothly synchronized or kind of embedded within this whole curriculum. So, there has to be like different school activities, it can be incorporated rather than making it an additional program or something like that. So, in that context it is much more likely to succeed and so on. So, it has to be lived by everybody, it has to be taught properly and embedded within the school culture and so on, which may take time, but once that is become a part of school culture, that becomes then smooth functioning without really having some additional burden. So, these various approaches to positive can be treated as complementary, it should be treated as a complementary, and schools can flexibly integrate them according to whatever curriculum they have. It should not be very rigid and so on. So, that these are the things that should be taken care. One can use certain broader frameworks to integrate all these components of or frameworks like PARMA H. H is for health. In addition to all the PARMA model, health like these frameworks can help align multiple approaches and programs. For example, school like which we will be talking about, like this Gelong school, use this framework to help leadership, teachers, parents, students reflect on their current state and future goals, fostering a shared understanding of strength and areas of improvement. So, such frameworks can also be used in terms of implementing, because this gives a very useful framework where a lot of this other component can be integrated within the same framework. Most importantly, school leadership commitment is most essential. Without leadership, school leadership getting interested, you cannot do anything about it. So, they should be interested. So, we will see how this PARMA model has been used in one school, that little bit we have discussed about that is called Gelong Grammar School case study. How this has been implemented in that school. So, little bit we will talk about that, how this PARMA model was used as an example of positive education program. So, this GGS school or Gelong Grammar School model of positive education is structured around this PARMA H model. So, PARMA H model focuses on P for positive emotions, E for engagement, R for relationships, M for meaning, A for accomplishment, and H for health. So, these are like positive word is used in all these things, so that there is positive emotions, positive engagement, positive relationship, positive meaning, positive accomplishment, and positive health. So, these components were focused in that school, how to integrate these aspects in the program. In addition to that, character strength were also focused in terms of this program, positive education program. So, three domains, three aspects were there in this program. One is live it, teach it, and embed it. So, live it means the level emphasized in the first level, live it in this level it was emphasized in that school, the importance of staff well-being and their ability to model principles of positive education. First, that staff and teachers were taught about it, so that they understand it first hand, and they can understand the benefits of these principles authentically themselves, then they can only teach to others. So, live it means first staff and teachers were first they were taught and they lived this whole concept. Comprehensive programs are designed to support staff in living the skills taught to positive education. Majority of the staff, including both teaching and non-teaching personnel, participate in multi-day training programs to deepen their understanding. So, mostly this was taught to the staffs and teachers first through training and workshop modules. Once they learned it, live it, then they can teach it. The next is teach it. The positive education is explicitly or implicitly taught to the student. It can be explicitly taught or implicitly taught. What is the difference? In the explicit teaching, it involves regular timetable lessons on positive education for students. So, explicitly means it is already integrated in the curriculum itself. So, they are taught properly as an explicit subject. So, these lessons cover a wide range of skills, knowledge and mindset aligned with the models of positive education. Some of the different approaches that we talked about, all these are taught in the lessons also. The goal is to help student understand the key concept, engage meaningfully, reflect on them and so on. So, explicit teaching involves actually including them in the curriculum. Implicit teaching is about integrating these whole principles, positive education principles into the different subjects, not a separate subject, but within all the subjects that are there. So, ensuring well-being woven into the fabric of daily life. Like in the history, student can explore genealogy through the lens of character strengths by interviewing family members. Some activities can be given in different subjects. In art, student creative visual representations of the understanding of flourishing, they can express it in the art form. In the geography, for example, student examine how physical environment can enable flourishing communities and so on. So, some of this concept can be integrated in the other subjects to understand, make them understand and link with other aspects of the world and so on. Teaching can all be also informed by positive education, such as integrating mindfulness practices and fostering growth mindset in students and so on. The last one is embed it. It means it is a complementary school wide process. So, you kind of implement it in a school culture itself, not just subjects. Like devoting assemblies or chapel service to character strength. So, you can have an assembly, one day assembly where character strength is focused on activities. Activities of assembly will be related to character strengths. Displaying a board on what went well to promote gratitude. Student can write in a board what went well in today. So, they can write about it so that they can focus on the positive aspects. Running project focus on random acts of kindness. One can have a project on things like random acts of kindness. They can do some acts of kindness and report about it and so on. So, like this it can be embedded in the culture of the schools. Parents also can be engaged in the multi-day residential training program to support their understanding of positive education and personal program. So, this can be extended to the parents of the student also. So, this is how it was done. So, they did it using live it, teach it and embed it, and overall they also talked about character strengths. So, this was the approach that was done in that school in the initial experimental setup, which was modeled later by other schools and so on. So, this is just shown what is the overall framework of this whole approach, which we have discussed already. So, this 6 component: positive emotion, positive engagement, positive accomplishment, positive purpose or meaning, positive relationships, positive health. So, these are the components which are focused, and how they were promoted through Live It, comprehensive programs of staff and teacher, then teaching them, then embedded them in the whole school culture. So, through them it was promoted all these 5, and character strength were also focused, and ultimately it led to flourishing of student life, feeling good and doing good. So, all these things ultimately the end goal is a flourishing or a life of better, higher well-being and so on. This is just a diagrammatic way of showing what we have discussed now. This is another way of showing that how it was implemented. So, at the core of it is how to increase flourish or well-being. Then at the periphery of it, it was promoted through character strengths, teaching them, and all these 6 components through teaching them, living them, embedding them and so on. So, this is how it was kind of shown in the diagrammatic form. So, with this I end here. So, this is about broader approach of positive education that can be implemented in the context of schools and classroom teachings and so on. Thank you.